This is 9/11 Freefall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am your host, Andy Steele. As always, I don't have a guest tonight, so I'll be talking about a lot of stuff this evening. I'll be talking about volunteer opportunities at AE 9/11 Truth, some of the ways that you can help out, even if you're not really an extrovert, even if you're somebody that wants to stay in the shadows, you might be a little shy. Well, there's some opportunities, some things you can help out with. I'll allude to it tonight. Obviously, if you want to find out more details, you can contact AE 9/11 Truth by filling out the volunteer form. You'll be in touch with me. We'll get you signed up. We'll get you on a task. And I'll also be talking about the big event over the weekend. And no, I am not talking about the Denver Broncos winning the Super Bowl. I am talking about the Super Bowl, however, in terms of Super Bowl City. Super Bowl City is the big carnival put on by the NFL every year in the city hosting the Super Bowl. Well, the Super Bowl took place here in San Francisco, or San Francisco Bay Area technically. And it was in the city that the NFL was putting on this carnival and had a huge presence, taking over several blocks. Well, 9/11 Truth had a presence there this year, at least on Saturday. Me and other activists went down there and handed out brochures to the people coming to that event. I consider it pretty successful, and it just really made me stand back and realize how big our job really is. I mean, just to reach out to those people on Saturday that were going to that event, and they just represent a small percentage of the people in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the people in the San Francisco Bay Area just represent a certain percentage of the people in the United States, and the people in the United States are just part of a bigger world of people that we need to get the information to. So we got a big job on our shoulders, but we can match it, and that is why I'm talking about the volunteer opportunities tonight, because we need all the tools that we can get. We need all the people we can get to mobilize our forces and get that army together to do the stuff that is necessary to push this issue forward, because this is the most important issue. Of course, the one we talk about every week, in case you're new to this show, is the issue of the controlled demolitions of the 3 towers in New York on 9/11. Yes, overwhelming evidence shows that the buildings in New York were brought down in controlled demolitions that day. If you're not aware of this already, you need to get on the internet. You need to watch experts speak out. Blueprint for Truth, the movies put out by architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth that lay out the evidence. The science is sound, the facts are laid bare, and now we need to do something about it. We need to get our government and media establishment to acknowledge what is right in front of everyone. So we need as much help as we can get. So I'll be going over all of that tonight. Before I do, however, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families, and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that beginning now. And that's 10 seconds.
My name is Leroy Halsey. I'm a forensic engineer and a professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Steel is a very fire-resistant material.
When a structure fails, my job is to figure out why. Over the next year, with a team of PhD students, I will be rebuilding World Trade Center Building 7.
How does floor 13 respond with respect to 12?
Using the same drawings that were used to build it originally, we will reconstruct it virtually. Our goal is to figure out why it collapsed late in the afternoon on September 11, 2001, even though it was not hit by an airplane. The investigation conducted by the National Institute of Standards and Technology concluded
what we found was that uncontrolled building fires caused an extraordinary event. The collapse of World Trade Center 7 was primarily due to fires.
Our investigation We'll evaluate the probability that this was the cause of the collapse. We are making this study open and transparent. Whether you are a physicist, engineer, architect, fire expert, or specialist in another field, or just an ordinary citizen, we want your participation. We are making all of our data available online. Every aspect of our process regarding the modeling will be shared. And we will be giving regular updates from the lab as we continue our work. Join us in getting to the bottom of why World Trade Center 7 collapsed on September 11th, 2001.
The views expressed on this show by guests and the host on issues outside of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence are the opinions of those individuals alone and do not necessarily reflect those of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth.
So welcome back to the show, everybody, and I forgot to mention that this episode is airing right before Valentine's Day. I'm not really going to do a Valentine's-themed episode because there's really nothing that I can apply to the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence associating with Valentine's Day. So I'm just going to give my love advice is, treat the people that you are with kindly, and look past the small foibles and look to the things that you have in common, because if you can find somebody in this universe that you are compatible with, then you are a lucky person. Not everybody can do that. So love the one you're with and appreciate everything that they give you. All right, so I started off this show talking about the actions that we were doing in downtown San Francisco, me and a couple of other activists down there. And what got me is I've been warned so many times about the police state presence downtown and the all of the surveillance and security, and you would have thought that you were walking into George Orwell's 1984 as you entered that, or some kind of 1980s future dystopian novel. Indeed, there was a lot of security. There was talk of drones flying over. I didn't see one, but I heard people on the BART system as I was coming up talking about that. So I thought I was walking right into the storm. I thought I was going to be facing Goliath right in the eye and having to stand up against the man. And as it turned out, it actually went very nicely. Cops actually told me where the place that I was meeting other activists was, because I wasn't certain about it. Very friendly to me. And, nobody really had any issue. And when I talk about nobody having any issue, I don't mean just the security. I mean, police stood there and chit-chatted while we did our thing, and there were other activists pushing their own issues in other various areas outside of the Super Bowl city setup. But also the people took the brochures and were very friendly about it. Major difference between what I see now and what I saw several years ago. People are not so knee-jerk in their reactions when they get information about 9/11. A lot of people have already heard of it before. A lot of people are very supportive. In fact, I was told by one of the other activists that was with us that at least one person, maybe even others, came back and told them, we are with you. And maybe it helped that the Rethink ads look like Denver Broncos colors. But no, people took the materials just as they came out. And the key is you got to find strategically good places to hand materials out to folks. In our case, there was a set of stairs that went down into the underground BART station. People were coming up it to go to the Super Bowl city. And I just stood there and handed it out one after another. People were very receptive. Did not see a lot of them thrown on the ground or anything like that. So overall, a good success. And see, folks, that is exactly the way to go about it. The small things done well every day. I mean, we actually ran out of brochures, I would say within an hour. I would conservatively say within an hour we ran out of brochures. So that our street action there was essentially left to just us standing there with signs. And I got some pictures of this. I got a picture of myself holding a sign in front of the Super Bowl City banner that was on the wall surrounding the actual event. We couldn't go into the event and do this. All the protests were sort of relegated to the outside of it, which is fine because we still had exposure. We still could be seen by everyone. But the brochures went very fast, so I guess a lesson learned when you have a big event like this that you're going to be handing out brochures at, make sure you have plenty of them. But it did not take that long, and the reason I bring up the fact that they went so fast, and then for like another hour we kind of just stood by the signs until we were done, is that, you know, it was only a few hours out of my life on Saturday. Very simple, very easy, and you also get to be around some pretty cool stuff. Just like when I went down to the Million Man March this year to represent AE 9/11 Truth, I got to be around that important historical group and that big event that was taking place. So when you do this and you reach out at big events like this, you also get to enjoy the fact that you are part of this event, that you are, you know, around it. And if it's something that's historical going on, all the better. So small things done well every day. I say that every week on this show, and this is just another example of that. It was only a few hours. Who knows how many people we reached when all our brochures were gone within an hour. And we had lots of them. It's not like I just brought like 50 brochures or something. We had tons of them. They were gone fast. So, hindsight being 50-50, we would have brought more. Did not even realize how many people would be down at this thing. I mean, I think maybe intellectually I realized it, but just in my planning I did not. But, did not take much effort. You just stand there and do it. And, folks, success is about 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. I know you've heard that expression before. But, I mean, just showing up, you've won more than half the battle. Think about all the people that don't show up. Think about all the people that say, oh, I can't do that. I can't make a difference. Oh, so what if I hand out some brochures? What does that mean today? Well, on its own, maybe nothing. But if you keep on doing these things, it compounds. Who knows who we could have woken up? Maybe we could have woken up the next Richard Gage out there without even knowing it by handing out those brochures. Somebody woke me up by putting a video on a video website that I happened to watch at 1 in the morning looking for something else. So when you throw things out there into the ether, you have no clue what kind of fish you're going to hook in. So that is a lesson to be learned from history and just from experience, and I know it, folks. So do whatever you can anytime something comes about. We got the presidential elections coming. Not certain who's going to be in them. I'm recording this a day after the New Hampshire primaries, in which Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump won their respective primaries for that state. So this could be an exciting election. I don't have a dog in this fight whatsoever, folks. I'm just looking for the entertainment value and for the potential for reaching out for AE 9/11 Truth in some capacity. Not certain how, but there has got to be something. And if one of these candidates, no matter who it ends up being, even if Hillary Clinton ends up winning the Democrats or Ted Cruz ends up winning the Republicans, doesn't matter who the candidate is, any of these people, if they show up to stump, right now they're in sort of a weak spot because they got to try to impress you and not come off looking like jerks, not try to be dismissive. So you got an opportunity. You can ask them questions about Building 7. Ask them very straightforward questions about the destruction, impossible destruction of this 47-story high-rise. Ask them how 105 feet of free fall is possible without the use of explosives. And if they try to play dumb, if they try to pretend like they don't understand what you are talking about, appeal to their common sense. It's not difficult, the concept of free fall, folks. All right. Understanding that is not hard. It's 9th grade physics. Okay, something is meeting no resistance for 8 stories. How's that possible? Unless you have explosives helping the process along. Use your common sense. Or my even more favorite question, is how can NIST get away with leaving out structural features of the building in their analysis when those features were there and when those features would have prevented their hypothesis from happening? And the most reasonable way to approach that in the eyes of the people that want to believe the official story despite overwhelming evidence that it's false is to say, okay, well, you don't agree with a controlled demolition, but why not simply rerun the analysis just to address the question and get a better understanding of this building and make people stop asking this question? What would be the harm in rerunning that analysis with these features included? And 9 times out of 10, the people you talk to will completely avoid the question. They won't even answer that. They'll ask you questions like, oh, so you think it was a conspiracy? Well, no, I didn't say anything about a conspiracy. I asked you, why not just rerun the analysis so that we can make these questions about this aspect of Building 7 go away? I said it so many times, folks. It's kind of repetitive, but if you believe the official story of 9/11, it would still represent a terrible failure by our government to do its most important job, which is to protect the American people. All right? They failed. All right? The one thing I agree with Donald Trump on, the very one thing, I'm no fan of Donald Trump, folks, but the one thing I agree with is that Bush really didn't protect us on 9/11. I didn't really understand how that mythology got created after that day because, even if you believe that Bush was some superhero after the event, well, in the months prior, 9/11 was being planned, and on the day of it was being orchestrated. So he really didn't protect us from anything, if you believe the official story. If you don't believe the official story, then that opens a whole new can of worms that, the part of this show focuses on. We just focus on the controlled demolition aspect of it, of course. But they didn't protect us. So Americans deserve to have every single question that they have answered about this event. Even if 20 years pass and a new one pops up, we deserve to have the question answered, to be looked at. I mean, this event should be studied for the next 200 years, if not more. The security failures, if you believe the official story. But getting beyond that and all the other outside stuff related to 9/11, getting back to our mission, the destruction of these buildings. I mean, think about this. You have this unprecedented event, and it really is unprecedented. I mean, sometimes you go on the internet and you'll have these people shooting their mouths off trying to compare it to other buildings, and then you look at the building they're referencing, and it'll be like 2 stories, and it was made out of wood and concrete or something like that. There was actually somebody that referenced a wooden building that caught on fire back in like the 30s in England that they tried to reference that as an example of how Building 7's destruction was possible. Now, I shouldn't have to explain how a building made out of wood and glass is different than a building made out of structural steel. Shouldn't have to explain that. All right. Well, you'll see people make references to these other buildings, and you'll find out, well, maybe like a piece of it fell off or something after burning for 18 hours, but it's not exactly the same thing. All right, 47 stories, steel frame high-rise, falls in 7 seconds. 7 seconds, folks. That's not possible unless you have explosives helping it along. Watch the building come down. Ask yourself, does this look like fire did this? What does this look like to you? And to some extent, it might be a disadvantage that a lot of people have already seen and heard of Building 7 because we've lost that initial control factor, that initial ignorance that people have about the building. In many cases, not in every case, some people still have never heard of the building, but where you show it to them, you say, well, what do you think happened to this building? And all of them will say, if they don't know anything about the issue, if they don't know that it's on 9/11 this happened, if they don't know that there's controversy surrounding why this building came down, they haven't had that groupthink set in where they have to conform to what the establishment overseers have labeled as acceptable to believe about that building. They will tell you it looks like explosives brought it down. It looked like a planned demolition. That's the common sense thing. I mean, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Now, the evidence doesn't just rely on initial perceptions. It doesn't rely on someone just saying it looks like a controlled demolition. And then you get deeper into it. You know, the 105 feet of free fall that I mentioned before. All right, you get into the bigger issue here at Ground Zero, incorporating the Building 7 and the Twin Towers. You have molten steel at the site. And the issue isn't, I mean, there is debate about whether or not the steel needed to melt and all of that, but a lot of times it's used as a distraction to take people's eye off of the fact that the steel did melt. All right, now I want you to think about this like a logic proof. If the jet fuel can't melt steel, but you have melted steel, then that means it's something other than the jet fuel melted it. This is common sense. This is basic forensics. This is something that a real inquiry into this event would have grasped on, would have gotten in the way of the propaganda if it could have. Obviously it can't, because the message was controlled right from the day of 9/11. But this is something that should have been seized on. I mean, this is something that police officers, if this was a case not involving such a huge event, such a politically charged and politically exploited event, it would have been a no-brainer. So the fact is, the jet fuel couldn't melt steel, but the melted steel was there, so what caused that? That's another reason that people should doubt it. All right, and now also that the dust was analyzed. The presence of the microspheres was a product of a thermitic reaction. The fact that the red-gray chips ignite in the ignition test that Mark Basile did. All right, that we have the chemical signature of nanothermite found in the World Trade Center dust. This would justify a new investigation, a reopening of the case. All right, when we look at the destruction of the Twin Towers, all right, the impossible destruction, the fact that these top blocks we're told are acted as pile drivers, driving all the way to the bottom, while somehow destroying themselves, driving through the path of greatest resistance, all the way to the ground. And that as this top block hit the lower portion, it did not decelerate. How does the top part of a building crush the lower part without slowing down? How is there no deceleration? Even as a hammer hits a nail, you're still going to have deceleration. The only way that's possible is if there are explosives removing the bottom structure virtually at the same time. So we have major problems with the official story. When you watch the videos of the Twin Towers coming down, visible squibs far below the collapse line. Charges going off ahead of time. Shouldn't be there. Reports of explosions the morning of by first responders, at least 118 of them reporting explosions going off. In a very conservative study done by Graham McQueen, have had him on the show in the past. So the evidence is compounded to at least justify a new investigation. And I don't know how you get more conservative than that. I mean, given how important this event was. People died. Like close to 3,000 of them. Who speaks for the dead? Who seeks justice for them? And to act like this is unreasonable, to act like people asking questions about this event is way out of line, as if the government is allowed to keep information secret. And see, this what I'm talking about before in just terms of the evidence justifying a new investigation doesn't even get into the fact that we have not even had a real investigation, that information has been kept secret from the American public, such as the input data on Building 7, such as the fact that the building doesn't even go through, or in their computer models that NIST released, the building doesn't even go through the entire collapse sequence. And see, folks, this is exactly why the model that is being put out by the University of Alaska Fairbanks that AE is behind getting put out. This is the model that is being constructed by Dr. Leroy Halsey and his PhD students right now as we speak. It's going to be going until April of 2017. This is why this model is so important. This is like one of the most scientific ways that this can be done. This is how science really happens. We're doing the investigation that NIST should have done. And we're doing it at a cheaper budget. I know it's a lot of money that is being raised for this, but it cost into the millions for NIST to do what it did. So that is why we are talking so much about it here on this show. That is why AE 9/11 Truth is talking so much about it. That's why the money is being raised for it. Because this, I believe, is going to be a game changer. Now, I mean, the corporate media may do everything it can to try to ignore this, because it's what they do. But once this comes out, once this is presentable to whomever and wherever will look at it, it's just going to be another weapon in the arsenal. It's going to be something that can't be just ignored. I mean, think about this. Model versus model. Okay, you have one in which it doesn't even go through the full collapse sequence. The input data is kept secret. Government essentially is saying, trust us. And then you have the other one where everything is out in the open, input data, all of that. Not only that, but the general public has a chance to participate in the creation of this model, to give their input, to essentially have their fingerprint on this. So everything is open and transparent. I mean, you can't get any more transparent than what's being done with this Building 7 study out of the University of Alaska Fairbanks. We have video blogs being put out by Dr. Leroy Halsey and his PhD students throughout the whole process. Updates from AE 9/11 Truth to all the supporters on the email list about what's going on with it. I mean, it's open and transparent, and all the data will be out there. So if somebody wants to challenge it, they can look at the data and study it. Can't do that with the government's model. So when you compare those two, what is a rational, logical, thinking human being going to trust more? And I'm not talking about propagandists like on TV and politicians who are really just propagandists in themselves. That's my view. I mean, yeah, I said before, rational, logical thinking human beings. All right. What are they going to trust? The one that's been shrouded in secrecy or the one that's out in the open and transparent? How can you discredit a model that's out in the open and transparent? How can you even begin to do that? And so, yeah, they may try to initially ignore it, but it's going to be very hard to. They're going to have to dance in circles, stand on their head, juggle 5 knives at once. I mean, that's the extent of all of the double talk and spin that they're going to have to do to pretend that this model has no relevance. And so we make them sweat even more. It's like the hypothetical episode of Columbo that I'm going to write someday, and I know the guy who played him is dead, but can you imagine that? I mean, Columbo talking to a member of NIST, say, what I see there, Mr. Sunder? I see molten steel. What is that? Molten steel. Well, I talked with my friend who is a metallurgist, and he says that steel doesn't begin to melt until 2750, and jet fuel only gets up to, at the most, 1800 degrees. What do you think of that? So now I got a dilemma in my head. I'm wondering, what here caused this steel to melt? Do you have any idea, Mr. Sunder? All right, I imagine it going something like that. I could probably write it better than I'm speaking it. Well, that's the way to go. And as we put out more evidence points, it's going to be harder and harder for them to dismiss it, to ignore it. Essentially, they're going to look foolish. I mean, they already look foolish. The whole system itself looks foolish and phony and just not even worthy of much respect. And this is my own view, of course, so I got to qualify that. But just watching history tick by, watching the presidential elections, just how fake and how much nonsense holds everything together. And as that gets more exposed, the people like Richard Gage and all of the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth get more credibility. And see, that's the way to go about it. I mean, everybody's waiting for some grand specific moment when 9/11 is acknowledged. The controlled demolition evidence is put on the front page of the New York Times, and everybody's reading it. And it's like a happy ending to an action movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger just throws the bad guy through a plate glass window, and there's an explosion, and it's over. We've won. Yay! But real life doesn't work that way. The 9/11 myth was constructed in a moment of shock and awe in the American public and fortified in the years that followed. It took 9/11 Truth a while to get formed first, to figure out what the evidence was, to get its act together, to get organized, and now it is on the offensive. So it is going to take some time, but you're going to get more traction by doing investigative work, by creating things like this computer models that out of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and essentially taking the legs out from under the official story with these things. You're going to get more traction out of that than just going and yelling at some politician at some event. I'm not saying don't confront them. They should be confronted with questions and evidence and be done in a polite way. But you got to be strategic. You got to keep your cool. And just remember that you are in it for the long haul. And there's nothing wrong with that. I talked about it last week. If somebody volunteers for a charity to cure a disease like MS, they go into it knowing that MS is probably not going to be cured the following week, that they're probably in for a long-term commitment for however long they can do it, raising money to find a cure. Well, we got to look at 9/11 Truth that way too. All right, the disease is 9/11, the event, the lies, the false official story of what happened to the buildings in New York. The cure is the 9/11 Truth movement, the charity, the collective charity that's fighting the cure. And so what does it get cured with? It gets cured with different antidotes, different medicines. It gets cured with Richard Gage's public presentations. It gets cured with news reports. It gets cured with letters to the editor that you write to your local newspaper. It gets cured with city hall presentations that you give. It gets cured with volunteering with AE 9/11 Truth and helping us out with the various things that we need help with. I mean, spreadsheets, emailing people, writing letters to prominent people for us. I mean, all these tasks that need to get done that we just need more manpower to get accomplished. It gets cured by submitting the resolution for the AIA conference each year and having that discussed and debated on. And, of course, it gets cured with projects like the Building 7 study that is going on right now. And that's why we need the help with it. That's why we keep talking about it, and we keep asking for people to, if they can't give their input, if you don't really have much to say on constructing a building via computer and creating a model of it, then you can help out by becoming a member at AE 9/11 Truth too. For as little, I believe it's $250 a month, you can sign up and help out in this cause. And I mean, think about it, folks. Major revolutionary movements throughout history have always needed to stay alive through funding. That's just a way of life. I mean, if you watch the John Adams movie from HBO, which I recommend everybody watch, I love that movie. It's like 7 hours long or something like that, but totally worth the watch. But a large part of it is him going from kingdom to kingdom in Europe asking for funds. It shows at one point him and Ben Franklin in France peddling little American flags to raise money. And this was at a time, I mean, American flag now is big and iconic and recognized all over the world with, at one point with pride. But back then it was nothing. It was like some little funny little flag that nobody had ever seen before. All right, but that is a big part of major change-making movements. And the great thing that differentiates us from the Revolutionary War, of course, is that we're not fighting a violent war. We're not needing to buy cannons and muskets and uniforms for soldiers. What we need is money to fund things like this Building 7 study. All right, so if you want to help out, you want to be a part of history, just become a member. Even if you're a member only until April of 2017 to get this building study out, I mean, that would be extremely helpful. They always say vote with your dollars. That's what I really believe has the most important impact on what happens in society. even more so than voting in elections. I'm not going to tell people not to vote. I'm not going to tell people that voting means nothing and that you should not show up, because I don't want to become one of those people. I don't want to become that cynical, even though I don't necessarily disagree with the spirit of that sentiment. But I think that what has an even bigger impact is just action, showing up, and willpower. I think there's a danger in thinking that you're going to just vote for somebody and that they're going to go do something. I've said this before on the show, and it's like I keep on hearing it. I keep on hearing people say, oh, we need to vote for Bernie Sanders. He's going to, if we just get this information to him, he's going to do something. Folks, Bernie Sanders has been confronted at least 2 times that I know of on national television about Building 7. And has said both times that he does not, he believes it was an Al-Qaeda conspiracy, even though he's asked about the science of the building demolition. He just goes on and does the same exact thing that every other politician does. So you can like Bernie Sanders all you want. I look at him, I don't see anything other than just another politician. So he has said that publicly, and now people will say, oh, well, he doesn't really think that. He's just got to say that. Well, folks, look, if he's not going to say it now, when is he ever going to say it? All right? We keep waiting for somebody to show their true face. Well, no, I think he is showing his true face. So you can't rely on politicians. You really can only rely on yourself and the actual will to do something. I mean, so much bad goes on because people are unwilling to do something about it. It's like that expression, for evil to flourish, good men just need to do nothing. And it takes a lot of inertia to go out and do stuff. And it takes, in some cases, people might get nervous if they go and talk to a senator who happens to be speaking at a town hall, or they want to go stand out with a sign and, bring a little bit of attention to themselves at an event like the Super Bowl carnival that they had down in downtown San Francisco. Now, I don't have any issue with that. I don't have any problems with that whatsoever myself, but I've been at this a long time. For somebody who's new to this, they may have an issue with that. They may not be used to being the center of attention. They may not be used to talking publicly. That's understandable. So that's why first of all, there's opportunities at AE 9/11 Truth for you to help out where you don't need to be the center of attention. You don't need to be standing out there in the forefront, with everybody looking at you and knowing your name. You can even do it anonymously if you don't want to associate your name with it for whatever reason. Let's say that you're a famous person, or let's say that you have a job and you don't want to be Googled and have a bunch of problems in your life because your boss doesn't like people talking about 9/11 and all of that. That still does go on. But you can still volunteer and nobody would even know about it. We got lots of jobs that people can help out with in that respect. But if you're not worried about that so much, but you just got a basic, fear of public speaking, fear of talking to people, the only way you're going to conquer that is if you just go ahead and do it. Now, I'm not an advocate of, the philosophy that if a kid is afraid of swimming, you just throw them in the water. And they either sink or they learn how to swim. I don't agree with that. But I'm about 75% in that direction. Because I've learned this in life. To do something well and get it mastered, you just got to go out there and do it and make the mistakes. And the world's not going to end if you make a mistake. The world's not going to stop spinning just because somebody laughed at you or you stuttered or whatever. You just got to go out and do the work, get experience, and don't worry about being the best at it. I remember this years ago because years ago I started my own website, my own news website, and I was covering various events for it when I could. I didn't really have much of a budget, but I would go out, and I went out to Washington, D.C. to cover a march that was taking place, not 9/11 related. And I was talking about my website with another website. This was a husband and wife team that was out there covering it. And I said something like, I'm acting like the media or something to that effect, some weak description of what I'm out there doing. And the woman said, no, you are the media. You are the media. All right? And essentially iterating to me that you can't talk in those weak kind of terms. You need to think of yourself as the media and as people that have all their facts, and because you do. I mean, you're going off of AE 9/11 Truth's information. You have all of the facts right there. All right, and there are actually tools available right now to help you out. On my phone, I'm going to grab it right now, stepping away from my microphone as I do this. I just discovered the world of apps, folks. For the longest time, I had no inclination to look into apps and play with them until I got this cell phone. And it's got a touch screen on it. I had a flip phone for the longest time, too. I used to call it Flippy. I had it for years, like 4 or 5 years. And I actually ran the C-SPAN campaign off of that old flip phone, so I'm pretty proud of it. And Flippy became very well known among many people at AE 9/11 Truth. Finally had to retire it because the back fell off of it and the battery kept falling out. But I still have it. But anyway, I discovered these apps, and when I was playing around, I was looking at one. Here's for math homework. I like algebra, folks. It's just fun to do algebra. I know that's kind of weird, but I still enjoy it. Here's one where you can read old vintage comic books. I got a bowling game and all of this. But finally I thought, wait a second, what about 9/11 Truth? You know, what about something that might be able to help me out in the street? So I I went into Google Play, where you get apps, typed in 9/11 Truth, and this one came up. It's called 9/11 Facts. 9/11 Facts is the full name of it. And when you download it, you can download it for free. There are a lot of various videos on here. Now, some of it goes outside of the AE 9/11 Truth mission. That's okay, because a lot of them stick within our mission, though, and are useful for street outreach. So you go on there, and one of the first things that I see right in the middle of the page when the 9/11 Facts app comes up has a button for videos. So you click that on. And as I said, some of these things are outside of our mission, such as the Norman Mineta testimony. But most of this has to do with the destruction of the towers and Building 7. There is the very last video listed is WTC7 full demolition. And right there, you bring that up, you can show it to somebody. Within 7 seconds, the building comes down, and they are a truther. So it's right there for you to have visuals along with what you are explaining to them. That is very helpful, because talking about it and showing it are two very different things. All right? Here's one video of molten steel moments before demolition. This is what I was talking about before. Molten steel streaming out of the side of the building. So instead of just talking about it, you can click the button and show it to somebody. Let's see. Another one of the molten steel. Explosion sequence on left side of the building. Blast squib seen during the demolition of the World Trade Center. So all of this stuff that I was bringing up as talking points, if I was doing this on the street, I could just reach into my pocket, pull out my phone, click on the 9/11 Facts app and the videos, and show it to people right on the spot. They're all listed right there with little pictures for you to easily access them. So this is a great little tool, and I don't know who made this, but I am in this person's debt. So this is something that you out there should be downloading as well. The reason I'm mentioning it on this show is because it is so useful. All right, so there are tools available to you. Actually, when you go here too, they also have the facts. There's facts about Building 7 on here, and yep, they're correct. It looks like even says free fall acceleration. Sometimes people say speed, but it's actually acceleration for at least 100 feet. So if you get sidetracked or your brain freezes up in the middle of talking to somebody, you can just go over this with them. This is actually a very useful thing. See, online resources. I'm clicking that. Now, see, I'm exploring a lot more of this right now here on the air with you. Exploding projectiles at the World Trade Center. And it's got links to videos. North Tower exploding by David Chandler. WTC7 and Freefall no longer controversial. Folks, you need to get this app. 9/11 Facts. Go to the Google Play Store, and you download it within a minute. Seriously, I was in the line at the post office And it just occurred to me to find something related to 9/11 Truth on this app store device or on my device, my little phone. And I got it, and I was able to test the whole thing that quickly. All right? But this goes to show you how simple it is to make a big impact. Now, if this person goes and makes this app and uploads it to Google Play, and then I go on the air here, and I talk about it, and I play with it here on the program, and then you go out into Google Play on your phone and find it and download it and show it to people, and a lot of people do that. That person has made a huge impact with just a random idea they had. We need an app. All right? And it's not like this app is all fancy and looks like some kind of professional company made it. I mean, it looks kind of simple. Just simple font, simple links, simple colors, but it gets the job done. We need to get out of this idea that everything needs to look all fancy and slick when we do things. I mean, it's helpful, and certainly AE 9/11 Truth has great marketing people who work for the organization that figure out how to make something look very professional and good, and we value them. But if you are out there just as a regular activist with a limited budget, and you're just trying to figure out how to get the info out, then that should be the main goal, and just do your best. I had to learn so much when I was doing my news website. I had to learn certain things about art and pictures and graphics and web page design and video production. And so you become a jack of all trades from doing this kind of work too. But there are tools available. And then certainly if you want to help out AE911truth.org, I already went over a whole long list of tasks that you can do to help out this organization and its critical mission. But the simple thing is you can just go out with a copy of our email sign-up sheet and sign their email addresses for the newsletter, ask them if they want to get more information. So imagine this. You go out into the street with your phone, the 9/11 fax app ready to go, a clipboard, and the email sign-up, and you just engage people in random conversations about this, and show them the building destruction, show them the free fall, show them all of these aspects of the controlled demolitions on that day, and say, hey, if you want to get more information for this, just give me your email. And a lot of people will say yes. And it's a great way to go out and meet people, too. So if you're a guy, we're almost at Valentine's Day here, and you don't have a girlfriend, it's a great opening line to talk to girls out on the street, which is sometimes hard to come up with a good approach to do that. So there you go. You got a way to get people in a conversation, engage with them, and maybe make some new friends along the way. And now if you get somebody who says, hey, yeah, I'm aware of this, and I watched something on this years ago, I'm totally with you, I totally agree with you. Well, then in the process of signing them up for the email newsletter, you can also get their information and see if they want to form a local group with you or go and hang out. Or again, if it's a woman, ask them if they want to talk about 9/11 over dinner or something like that. But no, seriously, you can use this as a way to do some real-life social networking. Remember that when we used to get together in the real world? Not on Facebook. But you can use this as an opportunity to get your groups together locally and make a difference and help out AE 9/11 Truth as like one big local group. So there's so many ways that you can engage. And then, of course, when you get all the email addresses, you can either take a picture of it and send it to my email, asteele@ae911truth.org, or you can mail it into AE911truth. You can always get in touch with me, and we can figure out a way to do it. Or there's a way. All right, but this is just another simple thing that you can go out there and do. And, folks, I'm going to do this myself. I don't ever ask anybody to do anything that I myself don't do. All right, I never liked that when people, they ask the troops to do one thing, but they don't ride into battle with them. I've always liked those generals that are standing right there in the fight. All right, so that's what I do. I go out and do the exact stuff that I'm asking other people to do, always. And not only is doing all of this work helpful for the movement, not only is it good for America, good for humanity, but it can also be fun. And this is something that I don't think that we as a movement and activists highlight enough in our talks to others and in our approach to the general public. because the topic itself is so grim, the reality is so shocking, and the implications are so big regarding the controlled demolition evidence that there's been a cloak of doom and gloom put over it. And I understand why, and I'm not even blaming people for doing that. But you notice that when people talk about this, the next thing they talk about is the implications, and then the broader implications, and eventually it just creates this grim scenario that is awaiting us in the next 20 years, according to most people. But I don't think that way. I don't think that way because I do have hope. I do see the broader 9/11 truth movement. I do see people waking up left and right, not just to 9/11, but other issues. And I think that we're going to have a good future. I think we're in the process of partaking in a revolutionary change in thought, in an awakening that is going to change the course of future history. I almost think that there was a way that things would have gone had the 9/11 truth movement itself not existed, and that we've altered that in some way. And we keep on altering it. It's like we're pushing a really large boulder up a really large hill. And that makes it sound like it's all arduous and difficult. But actually, as you push it up further and further, you're getting further up the hill. So you're still making progress. We're still making progress, even if it's just an inch at a time, even if it's just a foot here and there. Or maybe those cases where you get like 5 feet up the hill suddenly. All right? And it might not seem like you're going anywhere, but you still are going somewhere. You're getting closer and closer to it. And it's really easy to get discouraged and look at the big problems in the world, like the ocean, and as if you have the challenge of having to bail it out by yourself with just a bucket. A lot of people look at that vast horizon and that endless water and just turn around and quit because it seems so big. But first of all, you got to remember this. Yeah, it's not relying just on you. I mean, there are lots of people in this. This is a movement. This is a team. Strangers, people you've never even met before, are your teammates. So it's not all just relying on you to do something. But you need to be a part of it. I mean, it's relying on you to play your part. But like any big movement, it's going to require many people. And just because you're involved in 9/11 truth and you know the implications and it's terrible, the fact that the controlled demolitions happen and it's being covered up is enraging to many. It doesn't mean that you stop living your life entirely, too. You dedicate a part of your week to this movement, to volunteering with AE 9/11 Truth, and then you go and do other stuff that makes life worth living, makes life exciting. Now, I think this stuff makes life exciting and worth living, but you can also go out and do mindless, fun stuff as well. It does not mean that your life is over if you wake up to 9/11. It doesn't mean that you're going to be relegated to going out wearing 9/11 shirts and handing out brochures. I think the general public gets that idea that when you wake up to this, you're suddenly transformed into one of these street activists that are just dedicated every day to talking about 9/11 and carrying around signs and all of that stuff. No, that's not the case at all, folks. I mean, even the people that I've met hold really good jobs and, they do some volunteer work and then they do, their regular life too. That's all it takes. That's all it takes is just a little bit of work each week. And you can be part of it. It's just like those people in World War II who wanted to volunteer by collecting scrap iron or helping out with the Red Cross or doing the air raid drills, and they felt like they were part of things. But their whole lives didn't stop. They didn't shut down their businesses and do that all the time. All right? Well, you can look at 9/11 Truth the same way because this is a war. This is a fight. For the minds and hearts of America, for scientific integrity, for the ability to say that 2 + 2 = 4. So if you just do your part a little bit each week, that's all that's really required. Do whatever you can. And you can't lose yourself either, because just because you are awake to this and you know it was a controlled demolition and it might make you angry, you don't want to make yourself a victim of 9/11 either. You want to make sure that you are fully living your life and that you are not letting the terrorists win. When I talk about the terrorists, I'm talking about the real perpetrators of 9/11, whoever they may be, whoever set the explosives in those buildings. So just because you wake up to 9/11 Truth, just because you know that the buildings were brought down in a controlled demolition on 9/11. Doesn't mean your life has to be over. It doesn't mean that you have to spend every minute thinking about it. All right, you can still have a regular life. It's just you can dedicate a few hours each week to doing some volunteering. And folks, if you contact AE 9/11 Truth and fill out the volunteer form really quick, I'll get your application. I will find some simple tasks for you to do. Folks, there's a lot of simple things that just need to get done. And we need help with it. And I think I make this appeal every few weeks on this show. I mean, if you've got some kind of talent, something you can do, or if you just want to do something that we don't really have any envelope stuffing jobs because we do a lot of stuff virtually, but it is the computer equivalent of envelope stuffing. You can do that for us. Believe me, there are a lot of assignments like that we need to fill positions for on the volunteer staff. So if you want to do something, fill out the form, let me know, and I will get you a task that is going to be very helpful and very simple. A lot of these jobs, too, you can do while you listen to the radio or watch TV. One night my friend called me and talked to me for hours, and I got a task done. I probably reached about 10,000 people in doing it, just while over the conversation of a phone call, listening to my friend speak. So it just takes manpower, people willing to put their hands on the machine or put their hands on the boulder, I guess, and is a better way to put it, and push it up the hill a little bit faster. So let us know whatever you want to do. All right, folks, that is it. We are at the end of the show. I want to thank you for listening. Remember, this program is on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of this show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.